Gone with the Wind is a 1939 epic historical romance, produced by David O. Selznick and based on the novel of the same name by Margaret Mitchell. When adjusted for inflation, Gone with the Wind is the highest-grossing film of all time, and has become an iconic part of film history and American culture. However, Gone with the Wind's legacy isn't all positive. The movie is also deeply controversial for its portrayal of African Americans and the history of the South. Today we'll explore this film's complicated legacy. Does the movie stand up to the test of time, or will it blow away like the antebellum South? This is Gone with the Wind. The film follows Scarlett O'Hara, a wealthy Southern belle who lives at the plantation Tara. Scarlett is deeply in love with her neighbor, Ashley Wilkes, but learns that he is to wed his cousin, a kind girl named Melanie. At a barbecue at his estate, Scarlett confesses her love to Ashley, but she is shot down by him. She is overheard by Rhett Butler, a dashing, amoral rogue who admires her for her boldness. Though she is repulsed by his dark reputation, he vows he will win her heart one day. The barbecue is interrupted by the news that the Civil War has started, and the men run off to enlist in the Confederate Army. In an attempt to spite Ashley, Scarlett marries Melanie's brother, Charles, whom she doesn't love. Charles soon dies of illness, leaving Scarlett a widow. Though she doesn't care at all about her husband's death, she is upset that she's forced to act like she's in mourning. Her family sends her to Atlanta to live with Melanie to cheer her up. In Atlanta, she attends a charity ball to raise money for the Confederate Army. There she runs into Rhett again, who's become a wealthy blockade runner for the Confederates. She shocks everyone by dancing with him at the ball, in spite of all social convention. The war eventually turns against the Confederacy after the Battle of Gettysburg, and Atlanta is soon under siege by General Sherman. Though she wants to abandon the city, Melanie goes into labor, forcing Scarlett to stay and help deliver the baby. As Union troops start to burn the city, Scarlett and Melanie are barely able to escape with the help of Rhett. However, once outside the city, he leaves them to join the hopeless Confederate cause, and Scarlett is forced to get them back to Tara by herself. She finds her childhood home in ruins, pillaged by Union troops, and her mother dead. Though in bad shape, Scarlett vows to rebuild Tara and never be in this vulnerable position again.
As God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again.
Scarlett and her family are forced to work the land with their own hands, as all the slaves and servants have run off. To Scarlett's and Melanie's delight, Ashley returns from the war, but is of little help on the farm. With the Northern Reconstructionists charging outrageous taxes, Scarlett tricks her sister's wealthy suitor, Frank Kennedy, into marrying her so that she can use his money to save Tara. With Frank's money, she sets up a lumber business that brings her back into wealth. But her wealth and arrogance draw jealousy from her impoverished neighbors, and one day she is attacked while riding through the poor part of town. Her husband and Ashley raid the town in revenge, and are nearly arrested by the Northern troops. With Rhett's help, Ashley survives, but her husband Frank is killed. Now that she is a widow again, Rhett proposes to her, and she agrees to marry him. At first, Rhett and Scarlett are happy together, and extremely rich. Together they have a daughter named Bonnie, who Rhett dotes on and spoils with gifts. But their toxic personalities and Scarlett's continued love for Ashley create a rift between them. After a night of drunken fighting, Rhett leaves with Bonnie for London. When he returns, he finds Scarlett is pregnant again, But another argument leads to her falling down the stairs and suffering a miscarriage. Tragedy continues to strike as their daughter Bonnie breaks her neck in a horse riding accident. The grief almost drives Rhett insane. If that wasn't enough, Melanie suffers complications from her new pregnancy and is dying. After visiting Melanie on her deathbed, Scarlett realizes that Rhett was the one for her all along. However, with their daughter dead and nothing holding them together, he decides to leave Scarlett once and for all. She begs him to stay and asks what she will do without him, and he utters the most famous line from the movie.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Though heartbroken, she decides to return to Tara and vows to win him back one day. Where do I even begin with this film? Like I mentioned before, when adjusted for inflation, this is still the highest grossing movie of all time, proving once again that a great story and great characters will always beat out CGI garbage. Yeah, you heard me. Avengers and Avatar can BTFO. One thing I should point out too for anyone interested in watching this film is that the movie is almost 4 hours long. Though I watched the movie in 2 sections rather than in one sitting, I can say that I was thoroughly entertained the entire time. Despite the runtime, the movie never seemed to drag, thanks to the incredible performances of the cast. Vivien Leigh as Scarlett has to be one of the greatest performances of all time. She reminds me of an It's Always Sunny character. She's so transparently selfish and callous that you can't help but love her. The fact that she's also constantly moving and speaking fast gives her performance a great energy that's just fun to watch.
Nobody could accuse Melanie of being insincere. Could they, my dear?
Oh, then she's not like you, is she, Ashley? Ashley never means a word he says to any girl.
But Scarlett also has a real strength to her character that's unusual for female roles at the time. She's very active in doing whatever it takes to protect herself and her household, whether that means working with her own hands or manipulating others to get what she wants. She even shoots a man in the face at one point. All in all, she's a very strong female character for the time. The search for Scarlett, as the casting call for the role came to be known, was actually great publicity for the movie. Over 1,400 actresses were auditioned, including Katharine Hepburn, who wanted the part badly. She begged Selznick for the role, but he said he couldn't imagine Rhett Butler chasing her for 12 years. The role ended up going to the relatively unknown British actress, Vivien Leigh, and as they say, the rest is history. Clark Gable is called the King of Hollywood for a reason. Rhett Butler is the epitome of what it means to be a Chad. With his amoral charm and pragmatic wit, he's able to thrive while the rest of the South suffers.
Sir.
Are you hinting, Mr. Butler, that the Yankees can lick us?
No, I'm not hinting. I'm saying very plainly that the Yankees are better equipped than we. They've got factories, shipyards, coal mines, and a fleet to bottle up our harbors and starve us to death. All we've got is cotton and slaves and arrogance.
That's treacherous. I refuse to listen to any renegade talk.
He laughs at the traditional naivete of the Southern nobility, and like Scarlett, he does whatever he has to do to get what he wants. Their similarity is what attracts him to Scarlett throughout the movie, and it's also what makes them completely incompatible as a couple.
Sir, you are no gentleman.
And you, miss, are no lady.
Oh.
But don't think that I hold that against you. Ladies have never held any charm for me.
First you take a low, common advantage of me, then you insult me.
I meant it as a compliment.
But despite his apathetic attitude, he does have a real heart. He joins the Confederacy just as it falls, because he has a soft spot for lost causes. He's also shown admiring genuinely moral people like Melanie. And in the end, it's her strength of character that inspires him to leave his toxic relationship with Scarlett to find some real beauty in the world.
I want to see if somewhere there isn't something left in life of charm and grace. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I only know that I love you.
That's your misfortune.
The rest of the cast does a fine job as well. They're much simpler characters in comparison, but that simplicity is what sets Scarlett and Rhett apart from them and makes it so enjoyable to watch. The only character I found annoying was Butterfly McQueen as the slave Prissy.
Miss Scarlett, I was scared to go down that car shed.
She's a high-pitched and idiotic girl who doesn't really add anything to the movie other than bad comic relief. But Prissy's character might be symptomatic of a deeper problem than acting. We have to talk about racism in this movie, and if we're going to talk about it, we have to start with Hattie McDaniel as Mammy.
If you don't care what folks says about this family, I does. I has told you and told you that you can always tell a lady but the way that she eat in front of folks like a bird. And I ain't aiming for you to go to Mr. John Wilkins's and eat like a field hand and gobble like a hog.
Fiddle-dee-dee. Ashley Wilkes told me he liked to see a girl with a healthy appetite.
What gentleman says and what they thinks is two different things. And I ain't noticed Mr. Ashley asking for to marry you.
McDaniel was the first black woman ever to win an Oscar, and for her role in this film, she absolutely deserves it. As the head slave of the house, she acts as a caretaker for Scarlett. Her characteristic sassy and maternal attitude was so iconic, it would become part of a larger stereotype of mammy characters in the media. In spite of the stereotypes her performance inspired, she is exceedingly likable in this film.
This is one of the happiest moments of my life. And I want to thank each one of you who had a part in selecting me for one of the awards. For your kindness, it has made me feel very, very humble. And I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future. I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you. And God bless you.
But McDaniel wasn't allowed to sit with the other members of the cast at the awards show, instead being relegated to a table at the edge of the room. She wasn't allowed at the premiere of the film and at many other events because of segregation laws. I bring up these details because it's important to know that the time this film came out at. In the 1930s, Jim Crow laws were still a part of everyday life in the South. When the film was in production, the NAACP requested that the filmmakers remove certain racist words and imagery, because it might inspire more violence against blacks. The movie actually changed certain scenes from the novel, such as the raid on the shantytown. In the novel, the men who get revenge for Scarlett are actually Ku Klux Klan, but in this film it's never mentioned. The movie also refrains from the N-word, though it does use other racist epithets, like darkies. So if the movie takes steps to avoid being more incendiary than necessary, why is it still so controversial? After all, the white characters in this film are not particularly more racist than other films of the era. In fact, several times they're shown to care for their slaves. Scarlett gives one of her slaves her father's watch, Ashley says that he was going to free his slaves, and Rhett is shown admiring Mammy for her attitude. Well, one of the reasons this film draws criticism is for its depiction of the South. The film portrays the antebellum South as a paradise for both whites and blacks, and it was in fact the Northerners who ruined everything. Reconstructionists are shown manipulating blacks for their own power, and suggest that they would have been better off in their benign enslavement. Characters like Mammy, Prissy, Big Sam, and Pork are shown to live only to serve their white masters. They have no real background or motivation apart from their place on the plantation. In fact, their benign treatment reinforces the idea that blacks enjoyed their enslavement, and the antebellum South was a peaceful place for everyone. Now, one reason the film does this is because the events are happening from Scarlett's point of view. As her privileged life is shattered by the Civil War, it makes sense for her to idolize what she and the other white owners had in the past. Like the title refers to, the Southern lifestyle was blown away and gone with the wind. But the issues with race and history still led to this film's controversy upon its release, and the controversy continues to this day. In the wake of recent protests, HBO temporarily removed Gone with the Wind from their streaming service. When it returned, it included an intro video by Turner Classic Movie host and film scholar Jacqueline Stewart, who explained the problem the film has with race and why it should still be viewed. I think the way HBO handled the situation with this film was the right thing to do. As Stewart says in the intro, we need to acknowledge the complicated legacy films like these have. To remove or censor them would be the same as denying the past ever happened. Instead, we should try to learn from them and grow as people. All in all, I do recommend this film. Though I can understand how its racism can turn some people away, for me it was a learning opportunity and an important part of film history. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and stay tuned for my next review, coming soon.